Even the most ardent fan of Red Dead Redemption 2 will probably admit the game does have some flaws, and I do want to address those flaws. But before I do that, I want to talk about some of the ways I played this game that some people felt was wrong, basically. I was playing the game wrong. I was doing it wrong. I was playing in a way that the developers had not intended. Now, if you are one of the people that told me that I was doing something a little wrong, don't worry, I was not offended or upset by the vast majority of the comments. I do realise most of them came from a place of goodwill. People just genuinely wanted me to enjoy and love Red Dead Redemption 2 as much as they did, and they were worried that I was not going to get the optimal experience because of my choices. I do get it. I understand. It really was well-meant criticism. The first and probably most obvious example of me making a choice that was somewhat controversial to some viewers was my decision to play the game in first person. Now, the game introduces first person during chapter 1, in the first mission really, the first real mission, and I just, I went first person because the game told me this is how you do it, and I never looked back. And it never occurred to me that there would be people who would be genuinely upset with that choice. And of course, I carried on playing and didn't post the Let's Play until I was about 30 episodes into the game. So it was already too late to change it anyway. But honestly, having played the entire game in first person, I would not change my mind anyway. I genuinely feel like first person was the best way for me to play that game. I know some people love third person games more than first person. I generally prefer first person in this sort of a game, and I loved playing first person in Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, in my second playthrough, I actually tried to play a little more in third person just to see what the deal was, because people said to me that you're missing out some of the animations and expressions from Arthur. So I did try it, but honestly it just didn't really change anything for me. And I suspect it's because I don't really spend a lot of time looking at the character Arthur when I'm playing Arthur. I'm looking at everybody else, and so I didn't really pick up on anything from his body language that I wouldn't have picked up from his voice. So it didn't really add anything for me. And people pointed to some of the moments in the game. I'm not going to do spoilers, but there is a moment in the game where the whole gang are walking forward and everyone said, oh, that's much more cinematic in third person. And I guess it probably is. But that's the other thing. I don't generally play these games to feel like I'm watching a movie. I want to feel like I'm there. So being in the middle of the gang moving forward had more of an effect on me. And generally speaking, whenever there was a moment that really did need to be cinematic, the game went into a cutscene anyway. So I don't really feel like I lost anything as a player. Now, is it possible that some people lost out as a viewer? If you were viewing this as a movie, maybe. I do get that. I do understand this is why most movies are filmed third person. We don't strap cameras to actors' faces, but at the same time, I'm playing the game and I'm going to feel much more connected in first person. I really am. And of course, that changes my reaction, the way I feel. So whilst certain cinematic moments may be reduced for you, the viewer, if I'd played third person, many of my reactions would have been more subdued. They would have been different. So I really do think it changes things. And for me, the first person view adds so much. For example, when cleaning the horse, you got a real feeling for how big the horse was in first person. When eating food, or especially drinking coffee in the morning, the first person animation. Now, it did somewhat reveal the low quality texture in the cups, but I didn't mind that. In the morning, just drinking the coffee and doing that from first person, it felt great. I can't explain it if you're not a fan of first person, but opening doors and doing lots of mundane little things in first person just felt really good. I felt like I was interacting with a real world. I felt like I was there. Now, I do understand first person isn't going to work for everyone, but I'm absolutely convinced it was the right choice for me. I think the Let's Play was better for it, and indeed a lot of people have actually said they've changed their mind, at least regarding me deciding to play in first person for the Let's Play. They came out and said I was skeptical, I didn't think it would work well, but it did, and they've seen the game from a new perspective, quite literally the first person perspective. And this is why I know most people were not coming at this with bad intentions. They genuinely were worried I wasn't going to enjoy it in first person, and obviously I did. I thoroughly enjoyed this game in first person, and that's what people wanted. Now, the second complaint or criticism that I saw regarding the choices I made was my decision to turn the minimap off. Now, I didn't actually turn the minimap off. You can't do that, at least not without mods. You can set it so that it's not always visible and you have to press a key to show it and the quest objective. And that is what I did. That is how I pretty much play most games, and the game has that option built in. Now, some people felt that I shouldn't do this, or I should, use the minimap more, and I think a lot of it came down to them worrying that I was going to miss a lot of things because I couldn't see them on my minimap. The thing is, I don't feel like I actually missed that much in that first playthrough. I've done a 100% playthrough as my second playthrough, and honestly, there was only one or two quests I think that I didn't discover. In fact, it might only be one quest that I didn't discover in my first playthrough. There were a few quests I didn't finish because they needed to be finished in the epilogue. I'm thinking of things like the fishing quest and the animal collection quest. But overall, most of the salient story type quests I completed. I discovered a lot of the Easter eggs, not all of them, obviously. I collected an awful lot of weapons. I explored the map quite thoroughly. I hunted most of the legendary animals. I got an awful lot of clothes. I mean, I did an enormous number of things. And even though it wasn't a 100% playthrough, genuinely feel like I got my money's worth tenfold from that first playthrough. So playing without the minimap obviously didn't make that big of a difference. And I didn't use the minimap anymore in my second playthrough. Now, obviously, I knew the game better, and so I found things obviously a lot easier. But genuinely, I don't think there's much that I missed that I might have discovered had I had the minimap on. One of the quests is a quest that you have to do at night in Saint-Denis. I'm not even sure I would have discovered that quest with the minimap on, to be honest, the way I was playing. It's difficult to know for sure. And honestly, even if I had found that quest or anything else with the minimap, I would not have felt the same sense of achievement, or it's not even achievement really, the same sense of connection, that sort of feeling of being there, of organically playing as the character. I would have felt a little more like I was playing a game. I mean, part of the reason I don't like the minimap is it definitely clutters the screen with things. I do find it to be a little, I wouldn't say ugly, but messy. I prefer a very uncluttered scene, especially in a beautiful game like Red Dead Redemption 2, so I can sort of appreciate the vista a lot. But there's also the fact that I don't like the feeling of being led around by the nose. So if I'm looking for something, I don't want to see a dot on a minimap and just travel to the minimap and then travel to the next dot. I call it dot-to-dot gaming. I don't enjoy that as much. It's one of the reasons I turn off the floating quest markers in Skyrim. I hate that. I hate that feeling of just having a dot on the horizon and just keep heading towards it and eventually I'll hit it. I'd much rather find it myself, or if I need help, ask NPCs, or in a game like Skyrim, use something like clairvoyance spell. At least there's some sort of natural feeling to it and it leads me through paths. And it's a personal preference. It's what I like and I enjoy the game more that way. As I say, I don't feel I miss as much as some people think I will miss. That does bring us neatly on to the third way that some people were worried about how I was playing, and that was actually the way I was approaching the entire game. And you'll see why it's somewhat related to the idea of me missing things through a lack of minimap in a little while. Some people felt that I was rushing the game. Now this is going to have a lot of people scratching their head because rushing is not something you would associate with me. It is definitely not something I do in my Let's Plays. It's not my thing. In fact, quite the opposite is probably more likely the case. But I think people are using that word incorrectly. I'm not sure people understand what that word means, or they are projecting intent onto me that is not there. Because rushing basically is where you do something with urgent haste. And that is just definitely not how I approached Red Dead Redemption 2. I did very little with a sense of urgent haste. There was the odd mission where the game would give you a sense of urgency, and I would obviously try to engage with that urgency. I wasn't going to just ignore it. But as a general rule, I just went with the flow and let the game take me where it took me. So again, if it had a moment of urgency, I would approach it with urgency. If it gave me a moment where I could stretch out and maybe perhaps just go do a little hunting, I did it. I let the game dictate the pace that I played for the most part. And I think that's part of the problem. People tend to play games in a certain way, and I know some people definitely have a system. You know, they will think of quests as main quests and side quests and other, they will have a ranking system in their head, and they will say, right, I'm going to do all of the side quests that I can do before I progress the main quest, or I'm going to do all of the quests that are available in this region or city before I move on to the next region and city. They're very systematic when they play. I am anything but systematic on my first playthrough. Second playthroughs, third playthroughs, I might get more meta, but first playthrough, I generally prefer organic and natural as a general rule. And whilst Red Dead Redemption 2's Chapter 1 is considered a tutorial chapter, I think that Chapter 2 is almost an extended tutorial of sorts. I feel like the game delivers a lot of new concepts. It teaches you a lot of new mechanics, and it opens up a lot of different choices and options for you to try inside the main quest itself. And generally speaking, from the perspective of Arthur Morgan, you're probably going to be engaging with those things fairly naturally. And I think some people were worried that because I didn't just sort of leave the camp and head off in a direction and start doing side quests or start doing, random exploration, random activities, that I was going to miss the things that area had to offer. Because once I'd got away from Chapter 2, I'd never go back, perhaps. Perhaps that's what they were thinking. But that's just not how the game unfolded, at least for me. Now maybe this is because I don't fast travel. The Red Dead Redemption 2 fast travel system, by the way, is very good. I tried it in my second playthrough. It is very, very well done. But but I'm glad for my first playthrough that I just meandered around and travelled everywhere on horseback, because of course that does give me the options to discover more. And I found by chapter 3 the game began to send you further afield. Some missions, some things you had to do were quite far away, and so you had reasons, incentives to just head off and travel. And the more you did that, the more things you would discover, and then you'd get even more incentives to go out and travel, and more incentives to do things that are outside the main quest. For me, just following the incentives the game gave me, it just slowly opened up the entire world quite naturally. Looking back on that Let's Play, I think the initial trigger where I began to explore the world more was one of Trelawney's quests. This is not going to be too spoilerish, but after one quest with Trelawney, he gives me the name of a contact, and so I head off, and it's quite far away, to see that contact. And I think it was along the way there I discovered a trapper, which of course opened up more incentive to do hunting, that sort of thing. So I do know that I had missed a small pop-up telling me of a trapper's location during one other mission. Maybe if I'd seen that in chapter 2, I might have got the hunting incentive, or the incentive at least to go off and talk to the trapper. So it's little things like that, just key moments where something will happen, it will send you off in a direction, and then there's a cascading series of events. And I actually love that. That's what I really enjoy doing on first playthroughs. And I think playing like this on a first playthrough helps me connect with the character, with the world. I'm following incentives that make sense to them. For my second playthrough, I went in with more of an agenda. To be honest with you, the agenda for my second playthrough was to just go back and play the game because I loved it so much, and spend as much time doing really inane things. I spent 3 days in the camp doing chores, just listening to people having conversations in chapter 2. I think I got the legendary satchel in chapter 2. You need to get certain quests out of the way to be able to get that. I really did a lot of hunting, yeah? I mean, I didn't want it to end. I didn't want the game to end, so I started again and then tried to stay in chapter 2 as long as humanly possible. So I went in that time playing more for me. And honestly, to this day, even though I've done 2 playthroughs, I still see Arthur Morgan as the one I played in my first playthrough. That's the character, that's the one I felt connected to. In my second playthrough, I was more trying to just spend time with the other characters and missions and just the world itself. So I did approach it differently. Anyway, so that's 3 ways in which I know some people feel I approached this game incorrectly. I played it wrong. And I know many people have been converted and now think that I was right to do what I did, or maybe was right about one thing but not the other. But that's how I played, and of course it will affect certain views regarding what I consider to be flaws of the game. However, that is a discussion for the next video, where we will be discussing the flaws I perceive in Red Dead Redemption 2. I hope you can join me for that video. I look forward to seeing you there, and until then, yeah, we're going to do it on a Red Dead Redemption 2 video. Have fun.
The day is done, the time has come. You've battled hard.